You know, I'm really not too energetic today.
Yeah, no shit.
Don't say.
Mike had a bad day, everybody.
Bad day.
He had to talk to one guy.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And be upset about his box being thrown in his driveway.
Power and Speed here with Tad and Magnum PI.
We are Power and Speed. 908-751-0211.
And be liking us on Facebook and iTunes.
Yeah, got that in.
Yeah, you know.
So you had a bad day, huh?
Huge bad day. And you know,
Another Amazon delivery guy?
no, and I'm pretty proud of my footage.
Yeah, it
my
was
security
good.
cameras.
Well, yeah, so was I. And
I'm sure that guy had a very bad day.
I was. I wrote, on the text that it was his last day working.
I'm not a prick. Okay, I didn't do that to get the guy in trouble. I can't understand how people can
do that.
Wait a minute. Just to clarify.
Yeah,
you are a prick.
Okay. Well, I wasn't being a prick when I bitched about
that. That could very well be, but
what really set me off is I just got and my voice is hoarse from yelling today
at that guy.
Well, yeah, PayPal, a whole bunch of people. I don't know, probably 4 or 5 days before, I got like $20-something $100 in network switches that this fucking clown would have thrown out the window on the ground in the rain.
In the rain, yeah.
He didn't care.
No, and it's because nobody cares.
Right.
There's no accountability anymore.
That's why we need Bernie Sanders.
Oh.
He's $15 an hour for throwing things in the rain.
Yeah, that guy should get $15 an hour. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Somebody will agree.
Yeah.
If your system was more sophisticated, you could have closed the gates at the top of the driveway
and shot him,
and we could have killed him.
I should have a turret that motion tracks.
You should.
And when somebody does something stupid, I got like a Dr. Evil big red button.
Yeah.
Quit drone.
Quit crying.
So you really want to know why I'm so furious?
Yeah, short version, because we got to talk about car shit.
PayPal gave me my money back.
And you're mad about that?
Yes.
It's killing you.
You want to know why I'm mad about it?
Because you're an idiot?
Some scumbag ordered something.
Ooh.
Didn't have the decency to even tell me that he wished to make a return.
Yep.
Just went right to chargeback.
Yep.
And I'm like, why the fuck would anybody do this? And I'm like, this is like getting
buyer's remorse.
But he just got it. Like he couldn't even opened it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, he's either a scammer or he's just a douche. I wasn't sure.
Might be both.
Started the whole process with PayPal. I said, look, I don't even know what this guy's problem is. He didn't call me, didn't say anything. Make a long story short, PayPal decided that the guy doesn't have to send it back. No bullshit.
How much money was this?
$359.
So PayPal just let him keep it?
Yeah, so just keep it.
And gave you your money back?
Intangible goods. Not required to send it back.
All right, how can we capitalize on this?
But so basically this clown, this douchebag in California.
If you could do that every day, you could make a pretty good living.
Yeah. This douchebag in California got a free product.
Maybe he knows somebody at PayPal.
So hence my voice being a little scratchy, screamed at the first guy on PayPal. And then I said, you have facilitated this guy stealing something. So the guy says, all right, look, we made a mistake.
Dude, they're in Northern California. They don't care.
Listen.
They let illegal immigrants kill people up there.
Will you stop for a minute with your Trump fucking rant? Listen. Finally, they escalated it to somebody with a brain at PayPal, and the guy says, you're absolutely right. We'll give you your money back. I was like, I don't want my money back, because we talked about this briefly before. If there's a chargeback, the credit card company doesn't pay. They just take it from the merchant. So this guy had something. The credit card company took the money away from me, just so we're clear. PayPal said, don't worry about it. We'll pay you like we bought it. And I said, well, what happens to the product? Well, a guy gets to keep it. Are you fucking kidding me? You're going to reward him for being a douchebag? So unfounded or not, should I be mad or not? No. I'm pissed that somebody in this world can act like a douchebag and then get rewarded.
That was the whole PayPal thing for a long time, wasn't it?
Wait a minute. Do you not know about the people that are crossing over the border in Mexico? It happens every day. They act like douchebags. They steal from us and they get rewarded. This is a car show. Let's start talking about car stuff. Did you drive anything fast this weekend?
No. I drove my car.
I did.
Tad?
My Mark 8, hell yeah.
It didn't blow up.
It's Mark 8.
But I did watch because we were off a week. I did manage to watch the Top Gear episode, the first one,
Ugh.
Oh, yes.
and it was awful.
Yeah, I heard. I couldn't even watch it. I saw so many people say it was that bad.
Well, they said it's like the American Top Gear. They turned the British one into the American Top Gear.
Very rarely had I ever watched Top Gear and found myself fast forwarding through a segment, and that's what was happening.
Wow.
You know, special note to Chris Evans, and Matt LeBlanc wasn't bad, but it's just not right. It's just not right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it's like they tried so hard that they made it like maybe juvenile.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It's
they're trying to copy the old show, and it's just not working. It's those people don't have that ambiance.
Well, you know what I worry about? I worry about that the new show with theirs, the Grand Tour, is going to be them attempting to copy what they had with Top Gear, and that not work either.
Why wouldn't that work?
I don't know.
Because that's them. Yeah, I don't know. That should work.
I don't know. But the producer of Top Gear went with Clarkson, May, and Hammond.
Good.
So, you know, like I would think that the general feel will be
Didn't
there.
Clarkson punch him in the face once?
No, that was a junior producer.
Yeah.
Well, he couldn't get a steak. He was pissed. Can't relate.
Well-
Look at Tad. You know what he'd do?
Oh, geez, I'll kill you.
God forbid, take his roast beef away.
I'm telling you, we could do that show. Telling you we could do it.
We're missing a lot of stuff to do.
No, we're
buddy.
not.
Yes,
We're not.
we are.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, you said an airport.
An airport,
We can
Okay.
get an airport.
a television
Solberg's
studio.
right down the street.
Why can't we use Raceway Park Airport?
Television studio,
Oh,
cameraman,
we got a guy with money that
producers.
can get us one of them.
Listen,
Can
I'm not yelling at you. I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit here. We can't manage to schedule a guest 3 days before the show.
We always get them.
I know we do, but we're a mess.
You know why? You know why you can't get them? We're not on TV.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what.
No, we couldn't do it, but somebody should listen to us and hire us to do the show.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because we are three very attractive individuals.
Well, I got the Magnum PI thing though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think anybody's got an image of that, they got an idea. So I would tell everybody, if you were a fan of Top Gear,
It sucks.
watch it just so you're not just taking my word for it, but it ain't good.
Yes.
It ain't good at all.
I wouldn't even watch it.
All right. So what do you got, Thomas? You know some future guests that hopefully we can schedule?
No. Yeah, actually I do. I'm kidding. The Ford guys have been asking for a good Ford guy, and looks like we may get, well, we're going to get, I just want to do a little teaser here, John Mahovich from AccuFab,
Okay.
who happens to own the fastest modular Ford car on earth.
And he can clear up the long debated
Whether there's a stock crank in that thing or not.
for
How
whatever
stock is it?
for whatever reason Tad frequents a Lincoln board. I can just imagine there's a whole gaggle of people there with frosted headlights,
There are.
and they apparently have these debates about the crankshaft in this motor.
Yeah.
No, they have a debates about the motor.
Because there's a lot of really fast Lincolns out there.
Yes, thousands.
It's crazy. You don't ever line up on a Lincoln
Oh, I don't
without
mind.
at least getting a break.
And I guess the other side of thing is that you have some higher profile engine guys
I do.
potentially in the works.
Yeah, I do. I
Okay.
do, and a friend does. And yeah.
And
So-
I would dare to say these are about as high profile as you get.
Yeah, they are. If you're in that age group, like in our age group or slightly younger, some of the the Jeff Changs of the world may know. Well, Jeff probably knows who it is, but
I would hope
or
so.
who they are. But a lot of the like Subaru, Mitsubishi, Nissan guys wouldn't know.
They wouldn't know.
No, it'd be,
I don't think they'd know anyway.
It'd be
If you had a guy that was doing NHRA Pro Stock today, I don't know what those guys
Yeah,
would know.
probably wouldn't.
No, it's a very split world when
Yeah.
it comes to this stuff. And we've got Gearbox. I can't say the name. What's the name of it?
PPG.
Yeah. Well, it's Fitzer.
Fitzer.
Yeah, Fitzer Performance
Gear.
something.
Yeah.
Gear.
Beautiful stuff.
Really cool stuff.
So
Did you see the video of the sequential TKO in the Viper?
yes, and that's
God,
what that was, Tad. We
was a
watched that,
Viper?
and we were trying
Yeah.
to figure out what it was. They said, "Well, it says SRT. It must be a Dodge something." I didn't think it was a Viper, and I didn't think it made 1,400 horsepower.
1,400 wheel.
Yeah, that's
Impressive.
Yeah.
that's pretty badass.
Pretty cool.
So, I mean, we got him at some point when he's cleaned up.
Yeah, he's just busy.
Yeah.
Hope he's listening tonight.
I don't know. I didn't even know what time it would be.
I finally got the Velcro comment. Oh, you didn't see? Did you see that?
I saw that, and I'm
I
like, Velcro?
I get it.
And I'm like,
I can't tell
okay.
you on the air.
Yeah, and I guess that's something that Marco knows
Yeah, he did.
as well.
He laughed his ass off when I told him. But Yeah, so we got the Fitzer guy, PPG guy, same guy. We have Mahovich coming up from AccuFab. We have some big engine builders. Actually, one of them is pretty new. I didn't even tell you. He's a late model Hemi guy. He's
Okay.
probably the biggest in the country. He's potentially. I mean, we're talking to him now.
Okay.
Our people are talking to his people.
Our people.
Sounds top secret.
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder if people really think that happens. Like we
Yeah.
have some kind of agents in the background scurrying around. Would you take a call from Mike from Power and Speed? Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, please hold.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I hand the phone to you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, not exactly like that.
Yeah. We do have a lot of downloads though, man.
No, we do.
It's pretty impressive.
And I always try to remember to say thanks to the listeners, to tell people and everything else. And I
You
was-
guys are why we're here.
Yes, I was actually kind of shocked. I remember a friend of mine,
Oh boy.
and I know it's a tough one to use. It told me when you got started, well, you're probably going to be talking to 250 people a week.
Oh, that
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
His calculator's a little bit off.
a little bit,
Slightly.
little bit. All right. So,
Pi R squared.
and then tonight, of course, this is something that I was actually really excited. And I, in fairness, have been asking you as well. Can we get JC back? Can we
Yeah.
get JC back?
Yep.
Because we talked about the Namper stuff
Yep.
and a lot. I even think that could have went on longer.
It could have.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of very good info there.
Yep.
And one thing that is still to this day to me, and probably to a lot of people, is converters.
Yeah, like how do they work?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of know how they work.
Me
but
too, but there's still some magic in there.
Yes,
Like, stators and fins and all that stuff, and then magic.
Yeah.
And JC knows the magic.
yes.
He's
magic
probably not going to
fluid.
tell us what the magic is.
No, but I mean, I would imagine that general principle, a lot of the stuff. And I don't know if it's getting, like when you get into, I've seen the torque converters that come apart. So I guess
Yeah.
users can service them. So I would think if users can service them, they have to know a little bit more
I'm
about
not so sure that's why they come apart.
well,
I think they come apart because
It's
they have to be.
refillable?
You send them back to them, and they just don't have to cut them apart anymore.
just no more cutting it. Well,
Yeah.
I'd be taking a thing apart.
I know.
gotta know what the fuck's
I
in
know
there.
you would, but I think Neil Chance did that first. I don't know who else does it now, but I think he did it just because they knew that the power levels they were running. And I'm not a trans guy. Like I'm not claiming to even know what I'm talking about, but my common sense tells me that bolt togethers are just because they want to take them apart.
There's a lot of billet too.
And that too, billet.
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 Keyword.
Always a good word. Billet.
He wanted to say billet.
Yes.
I'd have the thing apart
Good
all
job.
over the floor.
I
Like
know
right
you-
after I got out of the box.
I know.
I'd be like, ooh,
Best
I
time.
could
gotta
look
see
at
what-
this.
Best time to play with it.
Do you see what the stator looks like?
Yeah. So, I mean, JC will probably give, and I always tell people this, and I know there's, some people listening now, and hopefully, I mean, did you, any of you guys check the Facebook thing? See if anybody put a question up? If we got anything?
I didn't, but I could check now. But yeah, Jeff's saying AEM guy. Yeah, I talked
Yeah.
to them, Jeff. They're coming too. I talked to Lawson, and they're down to do it. Actually, he's going to do it with another guy. It's going to be like a tag team thing because he wants one of his really highly technical guys on. But yeah, that's going to happen too. That'll be cool.
Yeah, well, I think that one we kind of know we can do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And can we talk about the one where there were going to be two individuals that both tune, or
I don't know.
not yet?
Well, I don't know. Well, Marco from Magnus. I don't know. You know what? I don't even want to say.
Okay.
I don't want to say that name because that guy is like
Our people haven't completed with their people?
Our people are not done. It's in legal right now.
In back office?
and legal.
Releases?
No,
and,
it's through back office, but legal is really on my shit about talking about it.
Okay.
So
All right.
got to keep them guys. No, this name is as big as it's bigger than we've had.
I was unaware our legal team has taken such precedence.
Well, they have to now.
Well, I guess so.
You know.
Since it's so popular.
Well, you saw what happens when you're pulling in here. All those people that are
Bad.
All the cameras, you know.
Yeah.
Bad time for me to start Mike University? Is that what you're
Probably.
telling me?
Well.
Probably not the best time. Yeah.
All right. Well, without further ado, here is JC. Let me get him in. Hope we did everything right here. It's been a while.
Yeah.
JC, you there, buddy?
I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Hey, man. How are
Really
you?
good. Really
Yes.
glad to have you back because
Yeah, I appreciate the call.
I got to tell you, there's a handful of shows that people have asked for the people to come back, and and we want to get to them. But I think universally, more people wanted to know when JC was going to come back.
Yeah, way more.
And about converters and
secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's flattering for sure. I just, you know what, I enjoy what I do and like talking about it and try to help whoever we can, whether I'm racing against them or selling them parts or whatever. So I'm glad that's working out.
Yeah, because you actually campaign an NHRA car yourself, correct?
I tried to. Haven't done anything this year, and I can't say I'm very good at it. But you know, we've got a super stocker and a stocker, both late model cars, a Dodge and a Copo, and we really put that stuff together for our own benefit, for feedback, and to be able to go to the track and change 3 converters and 2 transmissions with gear ratios in the same day, watch the weather, get the data so that I can then provide that for the customer. Because it's, you know, we're fortunate. I've got a stacker with, you know, with everything I need in it, so I can fire the car up, drive it, make a lap, make 2 laps, make 3 laps, drive it straight in, put the fan on it, and change a converter and have a time slip that's less than an hour apart and know exactly what it did. And it's really, you know, I mean, it's hard for the average guy to do that that's there by himself or doesn't have a stacker or anything else, even with help. But that's what we really set out to do, and that was the only way I could sell it to my mother to let me buy all it. And it's really it's worked out well. I mean, we learned. So with the stocker, our mentality when we bought the Challenger was that, and it had been that way for, I mean, probably 25 years, that the converter should flash right around just before peak torque or maybe a little bit after. So the first converter we did for the Challenger flashed at 5,700, and it took us a little while, but we kept loosening it up and figured out it liked it. And I mean, last year we were flashing 6,800.
Wow.
And we're well above peak torque. And you know, I mean, that doesn't just stay with me. I start doing that for everybody that calls that has any combination similar to ours or any engine that can turn some RPM. That's what we started trying for them.
And what people need to realize, in case they don't, I mean, I know about it because of my background, but when you're talking about NHRA stock and NHRA super stock, you might as well be talking about comp or pro stock. I mean, the guys they have the cars almost to that level of good in comparison. They know what they run. They know how fast they need to run. I mean, like, I remember somebody saying we had something on a dyno and it was down like 7. And they're like, that can't go.
Yeah,
and
right.
somebody was there and they're like, what do you mean it can't go? You were hoping to make? And I said, yeah, that's not good enough. It's like, is the guy going to know that? I said, yeah.
Yeah, they do.
A good guy would. So
the amount of rules for stock and super stock are just daunting to the average guy. Once you really get immersed in it, it's truly been a 50-year conglomeration of a rule book to have some sort of parity among all these cars. And yeah, you do dial a number, but at the end of the day, there is a hefty rule book to try and keep costs down, which I'm not sure how well that works, but it's for parity, and it's just daunting to the guy that's never looked at NHRA stock limiter or super stock or things like that. I mean, it's an imposing task to get started.
Yeah, you got to want to do it. But I got a question. So when somebody calls up, like I've called you for converters, or anybody calls for a converter, and you have a sheet that you ask a bunch of questions, engine size and cam size and duration and header size, just a bunch of stuff. So I guess you're using that to kind of gauge what the engine's going to do. But if somebody could give you a dyno sheet, obviously it'd be better for you to give them a converter.
Absolutely. So we always look for a dyno sheet if we have it. At the bare minimum, engine size, vehicle type, weight, rear gear, tire, and if you are running, how fast you're going now, and if you're not, how fast you want to go. And from there, there's a lot of dynos out there, and nothing trying to knock anybody that has a dyno, but some are calibrated a lot different than others. I mean, just for my own stocker motor, it was 699 horsepower in 2013, and 2014 it was 682 but the dyno had been recalibrated and corrected to whatever SAE standard, and they figured it was down about 18 or so horsepower from the year before, so we were actually up a couple.
Yeah, it's funny because everybody ends up establishing their own zero. Well, since we did this to the room or to the dyno, now we're down about this much. Well, where's zero?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a correct way to do it, and that's, you know, what all the OEMs do, and of course the real big engine shops. But, you know, to the average guy that's got a trifold door and a 2x2 fan in the back, he's not going to be able to repeat within 5 horsepower. And when I go down to the cup shops, if they don't repeat to under 1 horsepower, they start wondering what's wrong. So we do want a dyno sheet, but depending on where it came from, we still try to get all the engine specs to put it together, because, you know, the last thing we want is a guy to not be happy. And I mean, I can tell you, if we build a converter around just a dyno sheet and it doesn't flash to where it needs to, or it should per the build, per the maybe 1,000 other ones we built that are just like it, then something's wrong with the car or the dyno sheet. Mm-hmm. If we get the cam spec, the heads, the block, the fuel, the carburetor, everything else, then we can put that in our database and really come up with where it should be versus what your dyno sheet says. And then if the converter flashes where you wanted it to, and the car doesn't run where it should at the weight and the gear, then, I mean, we hurt people's feelings every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like from the exhaust system perspective, I'm sorry.
Yeah, math is math, and the numbers add up, and you can't really dispute that. And so if the car doesn't run how it should, but the converter does flash to where it should, and the 60-foot is equated and scienced out, we call it for the ET in mile per hour, that's what it does. I don't care what your dyno sheet says.
Yeah.
Yep. Because we had customers, and we always laughed about this, even some Superstock guys, that went to another dyno, and on the end of their exhaust, they clamped on, like, so let's say they had a 3.5-inch collector, and they clamped on like a 4-inch tube. And the 4-inch tube was 20 feet long to get to the muffler, and it's all sealed up. Well, you just added 20 feet of collector. So a lot of what you think you know, you don't really know.
And the torque change. I mean, at the end of the day, the only true dyno is the track and your time slip. It's automatics. I fight with guys every day. Automatics and chassis dynos. I can build you a converter that'll show you all kinds of power, or I can build you one that'll run faster at the track. So chassis dynos, if you take my Challenger and put it on a chassis dyno, it'll look so far out to lunch, you'd want to start over. But it's correct on the racetrack. So it's, you know, the dyno's there for a reason. We validate everything we built. We get some numbers. We have that as a baseline. Chassis dyno, fine. The tune's good. Everything's right. But it's got to go prove it on the racetrack.
See, that's probably a really good piece of information for anybody, because I've never been a chassis dyno guy. To me, when I think of dyno, the motor's in a room on a stand, you know, and that's how you test it. I always wondered how on earth would you test a car with a real converter in it on a chassis dyno?
Yeah, you pretty much have to. If your goal is to go on the chassis dyno and make sure the transmission, driveline, rear end all sounds okay, and to get a decent kind of baseline tune, then sure, you can't go on the chassis dyno to look for maximum power and figure out everything, because you have such a different effect off the chassis dyno when you get to the track, especially with any hood scoop cars or Ram Air cars.
Yeah, completely changes it too.
Yeah. Everything. Hey, some guy just asked, spragless or with a sprag? I mean,
yeah. So the other side of that's aluminum stator, steel stator.
Well, we should probably talk about what these parts do, because some of us, not me, of course, don't have any idea about converters.
I mean, to answer the question on spragless versus sprag, so you've got a stator that has a sprag in it, or a diode these days, or you have one that just has a slug of steel that doesn't allow the stator to move. It is always fixed to your stator tube. Down low, flash, torque multiplication, nothing changes. The spragless to a sprag, steel to aluminum, whatever. Up high is where it changes. When the stator is held in place, the fluid that's running through the converter and pumped in and then back out to the transmission gets strangled a little bit by the spragless converter, because the stator is held in place and the fluid has to be pushed through the fins. Mm-hmm. So Is there anything wrong with spragless converter? No. You know what? There's one less thing to break. They're, for me, about $120 cheaper to build, but most guys sell them for the same price, so it's a win-win for converter builders. And for the racer, there's one less thing to break. And you know what? Sprags do break when they're built right. And I mean, we're talking tolerances for the inner and outer race is 0.2, plus or minus 0.1 either side. And
That's
the materials
tight.
through hard and heat treated correctly, and the sprag's good, and the driver, you know, isn't being stupid with it or just ignorant to what it has to do and doesn't do. I mean, they last a long time. I've personally, in my Challenger, I've hurt one sprag. And I don't know, we probably have 1,000 passes of testing and flogging and breaking rear ends and everything else. So, the guys, the throttle stop guys are really a big proponent of the spragless stuff. They're pretty hard on everything. They leave at high RPM on the trans brake. They then lift immediately. Then they go back wide open, and it's just one less thing. But at the end of the day, two identically built converters, a Sprag style converter will be a little bit quicker and a little bit faster mile per hour.
Yeah, because that's what I remember. That's what I remember from my days, you know, being involved with super stock stuff, and you know, two types of converter failures in the Sprag.
Yep.
One would, you know, ruin your multiplication, and one would be like it felt like it just didn't want to pull on the top. So that's why I was wondering how you could have a Sprag less, knowing that you would give up the top.
Yeah, usually, if a Sprag breaks, the car will be it won't want to idle. You'll come out of the burnout and it'll stall, and you'll go to leave the line. And since it wasn't built for a spragless and everything's moved a little bit, it'll kind of just fall on its face when it leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do both, or you do sprags?
If I sell 1,000 converters, 995 has sprag.
Okay.
But I guess
it's very few spragless. Only the people that absolutely have to have them really get them, and they really have to want one for us to do it.
And I don't mean to minimize it, but probably the guys that would look in that direction are guys like you were talking about, permanent dial guys that they don't care if they lose a couple mile an hour.
More horsepower than they ever can use.
Yeah, no
So
rules.
It's okay. Yeah, throttle. Well, I mean the throttle stop guys. You know, the things like that. The real high horsepower guys, your pro mod guys, are like Chris Reaney and stuff. We put a diode in, and diodes. I've never had one break. I've never seen a broken one. They can't. They're so overbuilt. It's amazing, and the stator will literally rip off around the diode, and the diode's perfect.
What are you calling a diode?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that because I've always heard about it, mechanical diode, but I never knew what the difference was. I mean, to me, it was a Sprag.
The easiest way to tell is when you spin it and it's freewheeling. It clicks. It just click. So it has little. It's hard to explain on the phone, but it has a flapper and a spring, and when it's going one way, it's freewheeling, and when it tries to go the other way, the spring pushes it up and immediately locks.
So, so same effect as a Sprag, but not, just done mechanically differently.
Sprag is frictional, that it must roll back against itself. Right. This sounds like kind of like a Detroit locker might work.
It's mechanical.
Yeah,
right. Instead of a dog bone in a Sprag trying to stand up and stop, this other way, this little flap goes up and catches a groove and just instantly stops. When it's going the other way, the spring allows the flap to go down.
Got it.
And that's where you get that noise, a click, 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 click.
And
a Sprag's silent.
Right. And a Sprag takes a little bit of time, or a little bit of motion to actually get stopped.
The Sprag, I mean, whenever we're at a show or something and people ask me that, I haven't picked one up, and I mean, you can't move the thing a tenth of a degree, and when they're built right, you can't move the thing at all, and it stops. The diode actually can move a little bit and then stop, because you can get in between a flap and
finite number of engagements.
Got it.
Yeah. The Sprag, it's pretty neat how Sprag. I mean, it's just you really can't even move it the tiniest bit and go back, and it's locked.
Wow.
But I mean, again,
Pretty
you
cool.
know, just figure anything on your race car, anywhere, whether it's in a converter or an engine or a freaking wheel bearing, the damn thing will break at some point.
Yes, and anything can break.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about converters, like, and this is something of interest of mine. I hope that I'm not taken away from something Tom's got to say.
Nope.
But like, we had never, like in the super stock stuff, I don't think we ever made the converter hit below peak torque. I think we were always looking for something higher. And I mean, what is, I mean, could you, this is going to be hard to vocalize how people would think that if I left exactly at peak torque, I'm using the most that my motor has to offer, but that's not the case. Do you have any explanation as to why?
Well, when you say if I leave exactly at peak torque, so you know your stage and leave RPM really only dictates your light. It doesn't change much of anything else as long as you're in an area where the motor is somewhat happy. You know, you can't be, you know, some cars they're all choppy at idle. You can't leave it a choppy idle. You have to leave a little bit of RPM. Essentially, the higher, so if you have a converter that flashes to 6,000 RPM, if you leave at 3,000, it's going to flash to 6. If you leave at 5,900, it's going to flash to 6. That's all it will do. And when you shift, it's going to fall back to just above flash. It will never go down below the flash because it's unlocked, and it can't. So the deal with the torque multiplication and the converter and K factor and all that kind of fun stuff, essentially what we figured out with the Challenger and, you know, just sitting there and brainstorm, like, why does this thing like being looser? It feels like we're wasting our peak torque. Well, what we figured out was the fluid, we didn't figure this part out, but the fluid inside the converter it's pumped in by the transmission. This is your cooler pressure, and it's got restrictions, and it comes back out. Let's just say it's 60 pounds for your average drag race transmission for stock, super stock stuff. So the fluid's pumped in, and when it comes in, it goes between the stator tube and the hub on the converter that's slid in, and the converter's driving the pump. And that fluid comes in, so then it goes, there's slots in the stator. It goes underneath the bearing through the slots and immediately gets picked up by the pump, which is the part closest to the transmission in the converter. The pump fin angle is, we measure it with numbers, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 5 being tight, 10 being loose. The fin angle then dictates which direction and how quickly the fluid goes. Think about like a sled behind a four-wheeler and you make a turn, or a water skier on a boat. It gets accelerated when you're turning. So the fluid is then forced to the outside of the converter, and it follows the fin, and then it comes off that fin and hits the turbine. Since it just got accelerated off the pump and then smacks the turbine is what's hooked to your input shaft and what actually drives your car. So you get a vortex effect inside the converter. The fluid's coming through the pump, and it's going through the turbine, and then it comes back to the stator. Well, the stator blades are the opposite direction, and the more blades and or the less window in the stator, if you will, when you're looking at it, the more the fluid's interrupted before it can go back and keep doing this vortex. That's where your stall comes in. So you have this converter that just flashed to 6,000 RPM, and as the car accelerates and the speed of the fluid starts to slow down past, you know, as your car's accelerating, your turbine and your actual engine RPM, so your turbine's driving your car through the input shaft, through the transmission to the rear end, drive shaft speed is less than engine RPM. As it starts to catch up, then the stator, instead of being held in place and interrupting that fluid when it's a Sprague type, starts to rotate with the converter, and you accelerate down the track, and you end up with 4, 5, 6% of slip. So the vortex effect is really where your torque multiplication comes in. So what we figured out was at 5,800, all right, we flashed the converter. The converter has held back the engine at 5,800 because it was tight enough to keep it there. And we've used our peak torque. The converter's been accelerated, and it starts to starts to climb from there and gets into horsepower. So we went to 6,200, and we figured out that torque was then free to accelerate the fluid and the torque converter harder and faster. And then 6,400 and 6,800. And then we got to 7,000 and the thing slowed down. So we went back to 66, 68, and that was our sweet spot for horsepower, RPM, shift point. So 6,800, we figured out that we've got through peak torque and started to get into peak horsepower range as it's climbing, and that fluid was accelerated as fast as the engine could possibly put out, so that the converter can then give back that little bit of extra torque multiplication before torque fell off and horsepower picks up and drives you down the track.
So what happened is peak torque was actually used. You used the energy.
It was, and you used it to help accelerate it. It's kind
of like a momentum thing. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. If you went around the turn and you were going pretty fast, but you just hammered the throttle once just to keep it moving.
Yep. Wow, that's interesting as hell.
I get it, because if you were at or below peak torque, you weren't using the advantage of the peak torque.
You're just not being as efficient.
Yeah. Now, the place where that changes is when you get into blowers and such. So positive displacement blowers like tight converters and peak, because torque is all kinds of grunt is there.
And I would imagine that the turbo cars must be an absolute nightmare to get a converter good for, because you have a sliding torque scale.
That's a whole friggin' another half hour right there.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, the turbo guys are tough, especially if they're new to it and they don't have the tuning part down. They want a looser converter to get the thing to spool. Then you're also adding cooler pressure dumps to get all the cooler pressure out of the converter to get it to spool quicker, and then have it all come back as it goes down track, because now the damn thing at 100 feet's making double the horsepower it was, at the starting line.
Yeah, so they want loose, and then they want you to lock it up.
Yeah, they want it loose to get you there.
Tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as you put more and more torque in, I would imagine you would just drive your stall speed up.
Yeah.
It will, but luckily you're moving. The turbo car's back half and nitrous and everything else front half. So
right.
Luckily you're down track a little bit, and NHRA doesn't allow a lockup converter in Pro Mod, and they've now they put a rule in, you can't manipulate the cooler pressure after the starting line. I'm not quite sure how they keep an eye on that, but essentially a lot of guys on the trans brake have a deal where instead of 120 pounds of cooler pressure inside the converter charge system, it drops it to 40 or 60. So the thing spools quickly and nicely. And then as soon as they let go of the button, it all comes back in. You also have some guys that progressively bring it in. They'll launch at 40, and then it's 60, and then it's 80, and then it's 100 and 120, and you're there.
That's crazy.
But, so it's just a whole nother way to tune. It's pretty much only for the turbo guys that really do that. But that's just, it kind of, the whole conversation parlays itself into the lockup deal with the new converters. And, we started messing with that lockup converter. I think it's been like 9 years ago now with Rini and the Glide, and it's progressed now to the newest one I did. The thing holds calculated 5,000 foot-pounds of torque.
Wow!
So when it's locked up, and it's actually a bolt together. It's something we had talked about a lot and just never did, and so Dad never really got to see it, but it's a new take kind of on it if you're used to seeing other bolt togethers with 30 bolts. So we've got a dozen bolts and 6 big clutches that will the real goal for that's to be able to hold some of the diesel stuff down the road.
Okay, and that's essentially just hydraulically activated clutch. It's like
we've got we lock it up with line pressure, and you can progressively lock it up. So those same kind of cooler dumps for the converter pressure, you can use to progressively lock the clutches up so it doesn't knock the tires off or it's not hard on the tune. So you can, a lot of guys are playing with it. At first it was just lock it up in high gear. So you'd run down the track, you'd run the quarter mile, and maybe at 1,100 feet, you were out of RPM, the thing locks up, sucks 6% out of the overall RPM. You go to the finish line, more mile per hour, more AT. Even in the 8th mile on a lot of the PDRA guys and the big inch guys, I mean, we're looking at 300-400s and 4 or 5 miles per hour.
Well, we're getting. Sorry to interrupt, but we're getting a lot of questions on the board. Let me get a quick one.
We actually have a caller too. Would you mind talking to a caller or no?
Not at all.
All right. I guess that was kind of a crappy way to ask you.
Like,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a toll.
Go do the caller first, then we'll get to the question.
Okay.
There's no name on a caller ID, so how do I do this? See, this is why we need a call screener.
Well, we fired him.
No, we actually promoted him. He's sitting over
that's
there.
right. I forgot.
Wait a
about
minute.
Caller, you're on the air. I don't know who you are.
Hey,
Yep, what's your name?
my name's Dan, and I love the podcast. I figured I'd call and just BS with you guys about cars for a little bit.
Fantastic. Do you have a question for JC from ATI?
No, I don't. I just happened to call in.
Christ. You picked like the worst possible time, but Dan, but we appreciate you calling, but we got a guest that people have been asking for weeks and weeks now, and we got
problem. I'll next week then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, seriously, call back, and it's just bad timing.
Yeah, we'll definitely BS with you, but now's not the best time. So, but thank you for calling. All right, man. Thanks.
See ya.
That was pretty cool.
JC's off the hook.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Well, not really. First question's easy. One of our guys is asking to explain anti-ballooning, or I guess how you manage it, what you do.
Sure, yeah. So you've got a deal where you're putting the cooler pressure inside the converter, and if you think about the amount of square inches in the converter, the more cooler pressure you put in, the greater force it has to try and push itself apart. So when you build a converter and you weld it together and you check your clearances, you build it for the stator to have a correct height above and or below the pump, and that all can change your stall speed as the stator moves up and down. So if you figure the converter balloons or grows up and down, then your stall speed's affected. We have a deal. So our foot brake converters have stamped steel covers that we have made new, and we weld them together, and we put a balloon plate. We weld it in around the center where they're kind of the thinnest, and they're not bolted to anything like the flex plate. And then the top of it gets 1 or 2 balloon plates, depending on the customer's horsepower. And of course, all that adds weight, so we try to keep them to a minimum as needed. And then when you get to our trans brake converters, they all have pretty thick investment cast steel covers that we machine. They're cast in Colorado, so we really can avoid any anti-ballooning in the cover itself on the bottom. Then on the pump, we do 2 balloon plates. One is smaller, right, so it fits just over the neck on the converter, the where it goes into the transmission, and then one's bigger. That kind of catches a little more of the curvature of the pump itself so it's a double anti-balloon plate. Just for instance, for that bolt together lockup we did, we lock it up with 300 pounds of line pressure. So the first one we did was a little bit too thin, and if you set it up in the test jig and put or can't get 300 pounds of air pressure, but we had 130 pounds of air pressure to it, the thing raised up 60 thousandths of an inch.
Wow.
So that's the whole converter just growing. So we realized we had to do a little more work and get some more material in the right places on it. So essentially, pretty much every decent race converter these days has anti-balloon plates, 1, 2, or 3 of them. And there's nothing wrong with them. Kind of the more the merrier, as long as the weight doesn't kill you.
Yeah, because originally my thinking was that ballooning would just jam the crankshaft, try to jam it out the front of the engine. So it was more of an engine problem to guys like me. But
you can get into that, and that's another topic we deal with of flex plates, and flex plate by name needs to flex. So you get these flex plates that are steel and all of a sudden 175 thousandths thick, or some of the aluminum ones that are 250 thick, and they stop flexing. So the more the anti-balloon stuff is, and the thrust on the back of the the back of the engine comes with the high horsepower guys. The turbo guys are really hard on it. And then when, people started piling in the cooler pressure, you go from, my stocker transmission, it's got 52 pounds of cooler pressure to 150 pounds of cooler pressure on a Pro Mod, and you really are trying to push that converter through the back of the engine. And most of those guys figured a deal out, and they put an actual like Torrington roller bearing on the back.
Yeah.
So you're not hurting your thrust. If you install your converter and you don't have enough pull out, if you will, you're too tight, so you're flat against the converter, and you're not pulled out of the transmission enough, you get into a deal where you'll inadvertently hurt your thrust just because there's no room for the flex plate to move. It's already moved when you bolted it together. So we really try to have a minimum of 3/16 of an inch of pull out up to 220 or so, and it really gives everything a little bit of room to move and the flex plate to flex.
Gotcha. Got it.
So I'm learning stuff that I never even thought about asking about before.
Go, Pat.
But there's something Mike was talking about before, and same with me. I like the I like to look at them as billet converters, but the converters that can be taken apart.
Yep.
What is the reason? Is it more so for maintenance, or a new way of getting in there and?
Well, I mean, the bolt together converters, they're 25 years old or so in drag racing, and it's been reinvented a few times. Everybody first and foremost thinks of Neil Chance for his aluminum bolt togethers, and I mean they're a work of art. If you can pay for them, it's a beautiful piece. So the deal is you can test easy. You can change stators. If you hurt a transmission, you can take it apart and work on it. If you hurt a converter, you can take pieces out and try and fix it. The downside of that is they're usually heavier, and unless you're looking at a full billet aluminum 5-axis bolt together. The next downside is testing wise, like you can buy. I mean, let's say like an 8-inch bolt together converter that all aluminum somebody makes. You can buy like 5 of my regular converters for one of those, and without buying stators. So if you build a good converter, yes, eventually it'll break like everything else, but it's not going to break all the time if you're not hurting transmissions all the time, and if you don't want to risk putting a stator in upside down or anything else, then the need for a bolt together isn't really there. But the real high horsepower guys that are used to working on every piece of their car every night or every few passes, the bolt together was a good option, and they could buy one of those and buy 5 stators and shims and change their stall at the track while they're testing.
Wow. So you get like a jet kit for your converter, like a Holley tune-up kit, different squirters.
You can buy stators, with different amount of blades and or both fin angles, 45, 48, 50 degrees, 52, 17 blade, 14, 16, you name it. And they essentially sell them to you loose to tight and raise them up, move them down, and make these really wholesale changes or finite adjustments.
So when just to clarify, when you say loose to tight, there are probably numerous different ways to get to that result.
Yeah. Well, aside from any type of cooler pressure, you raise the stator up and down. We change ours in 10,000ths of an inch increments, and then you change the whole stator. I mean, we have, if I'm starting with the same pump, same turbine, one converter, I've got stators that will change roughly every 300 to 500 RPM for 2,000 RPM.
Gotcha.
And then you go back and start over, and you change one blade angle, and that's another 200 RPM change. Well, and we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 for a blade angle.
This is coming down to like
the height.
This is voodoo to me.
Ted's got another question.
Because
Go ahead, Ted.
it's like same on the billet converters with changing stators. It's like that's totally beyond me. But
they come with an instruction book.
Well, he's still beyond him.
The other one is like between a loose 10-inch converter versus a tight 10-inch converter, or like an 8-inch same stall, but
Right.
8-inch is much faster. Why?
I know what you're referencing. You're
yeah.
referencing a friend of mine's street car that you don't. I mean, that's my friend Jay had a converter, and he had
A
bought
sport or
yeah. Though I know that's where this in your head somewhere is still lost from the format, but when Jay bought his car, he had a 10-inch converter, and they switched to an 8-inch converter, and they stalled almost at exactly the same place.
Mm-hmm.
But the 8-inch converter was night and day difference as far as how it behaved and how it performed at the track. Is that because of the different methods to get from point A to point B with stall speed multiplication?
Oh, your physical size, and then your stator and your blade angles and the height of your stator can, I can put a 10-inch converter in my stalker that will flash to 6,500 RPM, and it'll just slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
So, or I can, use the 8-inch that we run. But like a good example is an 8-inch. Our tightest 8-inch we build, I can run in my Copo and, go 805 with it at 170, or I can sell it to a guy that's got a 1970 Camaro with a turbo 400, 373s, 28-inch tall tire, and 600 horsepower on the street. And it's a killer street converter. It'll leave the stoplight and drive away at 1,500 RPM. If he hammers it, it'll flash up to 4,000 and then just spin the tires.
Yeah.
If he goes to the racetrack, it'll flash up to 4,300 when it hooks and go on down the track. So the converter only knows what it's given to, its input. So if you floor it, it's got all the power. If you don't, then it just drives away like a grocery getter. And the biggest, the things to remember with the converter is there's no 10-inch that's sitting on somebody's shelf that's 2,500 stall.
Yeah.
There is, but it's only for like one guy's car.
Yeah.
And from there, it's a window. It's it's going to be 2,100 in this guy's car. It's going to be 2,800 in this guy's car, even though they call it 2,500. So your economy converters that are built to a RPM are very much dependent on what you're putting behind. And anybody that's trying to sell them or move them any way different than that's just not telling you the truth, or they know that you don't care, that it's okay, it's good enough for your street car. So, we have some street converters that are built to just the same specs, but we don't let the guy with the wrong specs buy the wrong one. I'd rather sell 3 of them instead of selling 5 and having 2 get returned.
Yeah.
So the whole converter, it just knows what it has. If you have a converter that flashes to 5,000 and you take 2 inches of tire off, you've effectively given the car more gear ratio, and it's only going to flash to like 4,700.
Mm-hmm.
You put 2 inches of tire on top of it, it goes the other way. You add 100 pounds, it gets looser. You take out 100 pounds, it gets tighter.
Mm-hmm.
So the converter is the flash is very much dictated by what you give it. That's why, when we leave the Division I race at Cecil County, before we go to Indy, let's say, the car's running a 960 and the converter's flashing a 6600, I get to Indy and it's all of a sudden the exact same car is all of a sudden a 980 and it's flashing to 6300.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't change anything but the air.
Yeah. Input
No barometer,
changes. Yeah.
It's nasty, and we're talking a 300 RPM difference. So, and that's every day.
All right, I got 2 questions. The first one's really simple. You going to Englishtown this week?
No.
So you're not doing anything?
Nothing. I'll be doing something, but it's at work.
Yeah. Working on that bulldozer
together at all, and it's we're lucky. We're so busy at work, but it's just one of those deals where we also bought a new building that's about 1,000 feet behind us, and it's a little over 100,000 square feet that has some people in it that are leases are going up, which is why we got it, because it's going to be getting empty. So we're going to be focused on moving into there over the next 8 months, and I've even got a Top Sportsman car and a motor sitting there to put together that's just kind of looking at me every day. I walk by wondering what's going to happen.
Oh boy!
So
you need another project.
Yeah, no, I do. So the whole thing is we're in 2 buildings now, and then we rent space in 2 buildings, and it sucks. So we're going to get under one roof, and everything's just going to be a lot smoother and nicer. But it's a project.
All right. So now this may be our last listener question, but it's actually a good question. Guy wants to know what procedure he should use to stage a foot brake car. With a loose converter, are you better off leaving lower RPM and really flash the converter, or hold it at a high RPM? He actually says to the point of nearly pushing the car through the brakes and then leaving.
Sure. So if we've got a foot brake car, I mean, more than likely it's a bracket car. So we're trying to run a number, and back to what I said earlier, the stage and leave RPM, as long as the motor's happy and everything else is right, it affects your light. So for for your stock, super stock guys, or any your foot brake guys, it's very important to always stage in the same place and hold the same brake pressure. And if you're a little slow on the tree, you go up 100 and you go up 100. If the car gets faster or slower by leaving lower or higher, it's because the engine and suspension was happier, not because the converter liked anything different.
Okay, that makes sense.
A foot brake car, it's very easy to see a trans brake or a foot brake. The higher you leave, the harder you push the brake, the higher the car hunches up, if you will. If you ever watched it, when you go there, you can feel it in the car picks up. So essentially, the harder you push the brake, the higher RPM, the higher the car hunches up. Well, you're effectively, all your suspension is now taut, and you've lost your bar angles in the back or your grip. Mm-hmm. So that's why trans brake cars leave and the suspension is relaxed. So if they've got a 2-degree lower bar angle on the scales or whatever, that's where it is on the starting line. Well, you might have this 2-degree lower bar angle on my Challenger, and we can't change it. We're stuck with it with the stock rules. So when I stage higher, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because the thing might try to spin the tire because the chassis is raised up and I've lost my negative bar angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you take the energy out of the chassis.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes perfect sense.
It's bound up. So again, your leave RPM when everything's happy is really just to cut a light.
Gotcha.
Well, I hope that should have answered Aaron's question. That's good. That's really good.
Okay.
What else you got, Mike?
I've got like 9,000 questions, but I'm sure this guy has much better things to do than talk to a guy who's not buying a torque converter anytime soon.
The best thing for us at 55 years is we've done near as we can figure just over 50,000 converters.
Wow!
So it's a deal where we've got records. I was born in '78, and our card catalog starts in '76. So we've got, from 1976, we've got specs on converters. If you bought one in '76, you can call us and we'll have the specs. And so we're able to hit the nail on the head more often the first time, when it's going out, because more than likely somebody else has that combination and we know what worked or didn't work, and we can put you where you want to be. So, and then we also manufacture all the stuff to rebuild torque converters, and we sell a lot of it to our competitors and or anybody else doing street stuff or race stuff or diesel stuff. And it's just another part of the business that, if you're going to sell converters, you should know how to build them and take pride in how you put them together. So we have that stuff too, balance and bond and leak testing, you name it.
Yeah, I will tell you, I've been there several times, and it is a pretty impressive place.
I would imagine.
A lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff, a lot of cool stuff.
There's one question I have. It'll be the last one, and hopefully it's not too stupid. Is there any limit to the amount of times you can cut a converter apart, or no?
Yes and no. The pump, depending on which way the thing's welded together, in most of your converters, the pump goes over the cover. The part that bolts to the flex plate is the cover. And every time you weld it together, you go to cut it open, you take a little bit of that pump off. Mm-hmm. For us, with the right guy cutting it open and the right weld, you can usually cut it open 5 times, and you're not going to be able to weld it back together after the 5th time without welding a ring onto it. So you end up with 2 welds around it and this extra piece of steel, which is ugly and another place to leak, or you replace the pump.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Good answer.
I thought that was a decent question.
Hell yeah.
Not bad.
Great. It was the best question of the night, Mike.
As it should be.
Unbelievable.
Okay, well, JC, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and your company.
Yeah, we're ATIRacing.com or Facebook or ATI or 800-284-3433. And we'll talk you through it. You know, we talk more guys out of stuff that they're trying to buy than we probably should, but we just really work hard on getting the customer the right thing. Not too much, not too little, just the right thing. So we really pride ourselves on that.
Dampers, transes, converters, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Go check their website out for sure.
Yeah, we can do another show on transmissions next.
Yeah.
Well, if you're offering, we're probably going to get asked. So, you know, maybe a couple months down the road, I'll be calling you again on a Sunday night, begging you.
No problem.
No, we really appreciate your time. You're a really good guest, man. Like,
I try, and you know, I do really enjoy what I do, and like talking about it. So I'm lucky for having a job like that.
yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Perfect.
Cool.
All right. Thanks,
All right, guys,
JC.
thank you very much. Have a good one.
And
Thank you
we'll,
much.
we'll get a trans show in the works. I
Yep.
promise.
There we go.
Take care.
See ya.
Hi, man. See you.
I just want to go on record saying I've been asking for that guy to come back for a long time.
I know you have.
Yeah.
You're like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
We had a lot of questions, and they all got answered, and I'm happy about that. That the people out there asked some stuff, and we answered it. You know, well, JC answered it. We just sat here and looked stupid at each other.
You know what the shame of it is? Is that I probably talked to JC, and you know, and great, born in 1978, make me feel like a really old bastard.
You.
And I'm like, what the?
about me?
I was like, I'm sitting here thinking 1978.
That
Yeah.
I
shocked
was
me.
like, I probably talked to this guy when he was a kid, and he's the guy telling me what to do because I don't know it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
old bastard. But I mean, there's a lot of, I could have asked questions like this to him or to his father a million times, but I think when you're in a position that you're ordering something, maybe you don't want to go down this road and be like, all right, so wait a minute here. Explain to me how this stall speed thing works. You know what I mean? You don't ask a guy that. You tell him what you want.
Yep.
So even if customers were calling him, nobody's going to be able to call and be like, look, could you give me a lesson on torque converters for the next, half hour? So I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did.
I like the flex plate. You know, that finally tells you why the flex plate's a flex plate, you know.
Well, I mean, I kind of knew that. And I mean, look, we've always talked and laughed about the guy that burned up his thrust bearing because he put the motor in and, wouldn't fall back nice. So he gets the bolts
tightens
out,
the bolts and
pulls the motor right in, start the thing up.
There you go.
You messed up. My thrust bearing's bad, you idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million stories like that.
And we learned some stuff tonight. What did you?
I learned a lot. I learned about the limit of converter life. Who's that? Or you can't say.
I can't say. I'll tell you later. Future guest.
Highly classified
Oh.
information.
Yeah.
This is really great visual for the
Yeah, I know.
podcast.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
can't see my phone ringing.
No.
it's got to go to the back room.
No, I learned about the converter. I learned what a diode is. It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I always thought a mechanical diode was marketing. Like, okay, we made this new sprag. It's stronger, so we're going to call it, what can we call it? Ooh, diode. Yeah.
The one way. Yeah.
That's what I thought it was. But I did learn some stuff. Like I didn't even know. I mean, and this could be because of the amount of time I've been out of this, but I couldn't even imagine dumping pressure and understand. I hope people understand when he's talking about pump. He's talking about like the pressures that occur pre and post converter.
Right.
So they're dumping pressure to change how the fluid is acting on the converter. That's
Right.
I mean, probably stupid, that nobody ever brought that up to me, but I got to tell you,
Explains a
back
lot
when we
more.
were doing in the Superstock stuff, nobody would ever thought about that.
Well, I don't think they had enough power to worry about it because, I believe what they were talking about, and Scott Clark was talking about this before. He manages, pressure in I guess his programming too.
Yeah.
But I think it's because of the power levels that they have. You're stuck with a converter, because they're not variable. So I think the line pressure stuff makes it a little bit variable.
I think a lot of people really don't understand how refined, like when he tells you that he's running with a stock and a super stock and that's what they're testing with, that is, even though it's a Dora car and it looks like a regular car that might have a little bit of back half work done, they are extremely, extremely efficient and they are extremely repeatable.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, and not to mention his stuff goes 8.0 at 170, so it's not like a P stock automatic going 1220.
No, but even guys with P stock automatics,
I know
they
they're
know their
refined.
shit.
I know. I'm not saying that. Yeah, I'm just saying he's got the best of both worlds.
We used to laugh because like a street squirrel would come in and be like, "Yeah, my car goes, 1150. How much power does it make? 600.
Yeah,
What
right.
does it weigh? 2,900 pounds.
Yeah.
As far as like you're an idiot.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, he was always good for that.
Yep.
All right. Anything else from anybody?
Nope.
Pat.
Good questions, Ted.
Yeah,
Ned.
did good.
Bob.
Did good, Bill.
I'm just gonna keep calling you different names. Well, if you don't talk enough, nobody knows who it is.
You could be anybody, Pat.
Ned.
Wait.
Ted.
There's the
Yeah, the FUD handshake.
just so you know. Yeah, I was going to say it. The hands.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this one. I know a lot of people had asked for him to come back. So, look, you got it again. He'll come back for transits if you got questions.
The guys
So,
in the back room, they're all excited, right?
Yeah. All the engineers.
Back office
listening.
people.
Yeah.
Oh no, the law.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next week.